I stood on my son's porch in 35 degrees air, snow pinning my coat to my shoulders like wet sand, while the house glowed gold behind the glass. Laughter rolled out from the living room, clinking glasses, soft music, the kind of warmth you feel in your bones. Then I heard her voice, clear through the barely open door. God, that old woman is such a pain. Sarah, my daughter-in-law. More laughter followed, and this time I heard Michael's. My boy. The one I raised alone after his father died when he was 8. I'd worked nights at the diner, weekends cleaning offices, and whatever mornings were left at the school. Any shift that kept the lights on and him in sneakers that fit. I'd told myself it was worth every missed concert, every cold dinner eaten over a sink. That one day, he'd understand. On that porch, I pressed my palm to the wood as if touch alone could warm me. The crack of the door narrowed. Sarah stepped out, all perfume and red dress, her breath hardly fogging the air. Clarice, she said, flat as ice, tonight isn't a good night. I was invited, I whispered. Michael called me 3 weeks ago. She tipped her head, the tiniest smile. Leave the gifts on the porch. Inside, the firelight flickered against their perfect life. Wine, expensive flowers, a mantel dressed like a magazine spread. I looked past her shoulder and saw Michael by the fireplace, telling a story that made everyone laugh. He didn't ask who was at the door. He didn't look up. I am 70. I am a mother who kept a promise she made to a shaking little boy the night his father didn't come home. We're going to be okay. I believed that for decades. Standing there with snow damp through to my skin, I felt the last thread snap. I turned. I set the gift bag down where she told me to. I walked carefully over the ice to my old Honda, hands trembling from more than the cold. My keys slipped. The horn startled me. The windshield was already crusted white. I told myself to breathe, to drive, to go home. But fate doesn't always wait for courage. Days later, I stood in that same doorway again. Only this time, I wasn't alone. A tall young man with Michael's eyes stepped past me, jaw tight, phone in his fist. My grandson, the one I'd never been allowed to meet. He looked at Sarah, then at the door, and his foot crashed forward. Wood slammed the wall. The house jumped. I'm done, he said, voice low, steady. With the lies, with the way you've treated her. He stared straight at his mother. 3 words fell like a gavel. You're finished, Mom. If you're listening to this, tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far a story like this travels. How many hearts know this kind of cold? I had no idea that in 3 days, everything would change. Christmas Eve began with hope. I woke early in my little apartment, the thin December light spilling across the small tree I'd decorated with ornaments that carried decades of memory. Popsicle stick angels, paper snowflakes. A clay handprint Michael had made when he was 6. They felt like pieces of a world that had once been mine. I wrapped the last of the gifts with shaking fingers. Tape pulling uneven, scissors dull from years of use. A scarf for Sarah, soft and blue. A photo album for Michael, filled with childhood snapshots. And a bottle of wine I couldn't really afford but bought anyway, because I wanted them to have something special from me. I paused in front of the mirror. The coat I pulled on was too thin, the fabric worn smooth at the cuffs. I told myself it wouldn't matter. You'll be inside, I whispered, warm, surrounded by family. The drive through the snow took longer than I'd expected. My old Honda rattled with every mile, the heater blowing lukewarm air, windshield wipers squealing. But when I turned into Michael's neighborhood and saw the glow of his house, I smiled. Lights strung across the eaves, shadows moving behind the curtains, the sound of laughter spilling out like music. I parked carefully, gripping the bag of gifts. The icy walkway sparkled under the street lamp. My breath turned white in the air as I climbed the steps, heart racing with anticipation. I raised my hand and knocked. Footsteps. The door cracked open, and there was Sarah. Her face was flawless, framed by blonde hair that caught the warm light inside. Her red dress shimmered like silk, expensive, deliberate. But her eyes, those were cold, sharp, cutting straight through me. "Clarice," she said, my name flat, empty. "What are you doing here?" I blinked. "Michael invited me for Christmas dinner. He called 3 weeks ago." She shifted, pulling the door closer behind her, blocking my view. The cold hit me then, sharper than I'd expected. My coat was no match. "Tonight isn't a good night," she whispered, her voice like a knife wrapped in velvet. "Michael's business partners are here. Their families. It's not appropriate." I tried to smile, tried to steady my voice. "But he asked me. He wanted me here." Her eyes hardened. "Michael says a lot of things. He feels sorry for you, Clarice. That doesn't mean you're included in everything." Inside, I could hear the clink of glasses. A burst of laughter. My son's voice above the rest, telling some story, everyone amused. He hadn't even come to the door. "I brought gifts," I whispered, lifting the bag in my hand like an offering. She glanced at it with something close to disgust. "Just leave them on the porch. I'll make sure everyone gets them." And then, through the door still ajar, her voice rose again, but this time she wasn't speaking to me. "God, that old woman is such a pain in the ass," she called to the crowd inside. "She just shows up expecting us to drop everything. Nobody can stand her anymore." Laughter followed. I froze. Among the voices, I heard Michael's, the sound of my boy, the one I had raised through nights of exhaustion, joining the chorus that mocked me. The snow bit through my coat, stung my skin. But the real cold was inside. "Did you hear that?" I asked Sarah. She turned back, not flinching, not apologizing, only satisfied. "Hear what?" "What you just said, about me, about nobody being able to stand me." She shrugged. "I was just being honest. You're older. Sometimes older people don't realize when they're being difficult. Maybe it's time you spent holidays at the senior center. They have programs for people like you, people like me." Her words sliced deeper than the wind ever could. "I raised him alone," I whispered. "I gave him everything." "And he's grateful," she said, dismissive. "But gratitude doesn't mean he has to sacrifice his life for you. These people inside, they matter. For his career, for his future." Behind her, I saw Michael, my son, my only child, laughing still, comfortable, at ease, oblivious to the woman standing outside in the snow. "I'll go," I managed. "Good," she answered, already turning back inside. "And next time, Clarice, call first. You can't just assume you're welcome." The door closed. The click was soft, but it might as well have been a slam. I set the gifts down. My feet slipped on the ice as I returned to my car, vision blurred. The warmth inside the house flickered behind me, laughter chasing me down the walkway. The Honda seat was icy. My hands trembled as I fit the key into the ignition. For a long moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I had given him my retirement savings for the down payment on that house, and still, I was left outside. As I drove home, red lights stretched the minutes, each turn heavier. My mind went backward, years collapsing in on me. Back to Jim's sudden death when Michael was 8. Back to the nights at the diner, pouring coffee for truck drivers until dawn. Back to Saturdays spent scrubbing offices while Michael stayed at my sister's, angry and quiet when I picked him up. I saw the school auditorium where he'd searched the crowd for me during the Christmas concert. His shoulders slumped when he realized I wasn't there. I'd been serving pie at the diner that night. I saw him at 12, eating cereal alone at the kitchen table because I was late again. At 13, folding his own laundry without a word. At 17, telling me he was fine every time I asked how he felt. Every choice I made had been for him, to keep us afloat, to make sure he had a chance. Yet each sacrifice seemed to push him further away, brick by brick, until a wall stood between us. And now, years later, that wall had turned into a locked door, one that shut me out completely while he laughed with the woman who wanted me gone. By the time I reached my apartment complex, snow piled high on the windshield wipers. I could barely grip the steering wheel. The hallway smelled faintly of pine and cookies as I fumbled with my keys. Inside, my apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The little tree blinked in the corner, its ornaments handmade by the same boy who had just laughed at his wife's cruelty. I sank into my recliner. My fingers ached, but the ache in my chest was worse. God, that old woman is such a pain. Her voice replayed in my head over and over until it was almost louder than the silence around me. I thought of the photo album sitting on their porch, of the scarf Sarah would probably never wear, of the wine bottle I couldn't afford. I thought of the years I'd spent hoping for even one warm moment of family. I closed my eyes, but all I could see was Sarah's smirk, Michael's laughter, the door shutting in my face. And I knew then, the little hope I'd clung to, that I still belonged somewhere in his life, had shattered. But Sarah wasn't done erasing me yet. The night after Christmas, I sat in my recliner, the tiny tree blinking in the corner, the silence pressing like another layer of snow. My thoughts wouldn't let me rest. They circled back, not just to that porch, but to every sign I had ignored, every moment Sarah had been chipping away at the thread between me and my son. I thought of their wedding. It had been beautiful, in the way glossy magazines are beautiful. The reception hall glowed with crystal chandeliers, the tables heavy with flowers I could never afford. Sarah's family stood out, polished, wealthy, secure. I had saved for months, bought a dress from Walmart, shoes that didn't pinch, and still I felt like a stranger who had wandered in where she didn't belong. I sat at a table with Michael's college friends. They were kind, but their smiles never reached their eyes. Sarah's relatives barely looked at me. When people asked who I was, I said proudly, "I'm his mother." But the words fell flat against their expectations. Their eyes traveled down my discount dress, my tired face, the accent of a woman who had worked too many night shifts. Sarah was polite that day, but even then, I felt her measuring me, cataloging the ways I didn't fit into her world. When Michael introduced us, she smiled, said all the right words, but her eyes were sharp. From then on, every phone call with Michael felt like she was there, even if she wasn't on the line. His voice became careful, filtered. Questions about me grew fewer until they disappeared altogether. 3 years ago, when pneumonia sent me to the hospital, I called his number. Sarah answered. Her tone was light, distracted. "Michael's at a business dinner. I'll tell him you called." He never called back. When I reached him 3 days later, he sounded surprised. "Sarah didn't say it was urgent, Mom. That should have been my warning. But I told myself she was busy, protective, that she meant well. And yet, this Christmas proved what I had always feared. Sarah hadn't just married Michael. She had built a wall around him and locked me out. I tried to push the memory aside, but it returned again and again. The porch, the door cracked open, Sarah's smirk, Michael's laugh. The gifts I had left by the door haunted me most. I imagined Sarah sneering at the scarf, tossing the photo album into some drawer, pouring the wine for her guests without a second thought. I whispered into the silence, "I raised you. I gave you everything." But the silence gave nothing back. 3 days passed in a gray blur. Grocery shopping, bills, a walk down the hallway that smelled faintly of pine from someone else's decorations. Each task felt like moving underwater. On the third morning, the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers usually meant scams or sales pitches I couldn't afford. But something tugged at me. I picked up. "Hello? Is this Clarice Henderson?" A young male voice, hesitant. "Yes," I said slowly. "Who's calling?" My name is David Morrison. The voice trembled. I think you might be my grandmother. The world tilted. My hand tightened on the phone until my knuckles ached. I'm sorry. What did you say? My grandmother. My biological grandmother. I've been looking for you for almost 2 years. I sank into a kitchen chair, my breath shallow. I don't understand. Who are your parents? My mother is Sarah Morrison. Well, Sarah Henderson now. She married your son about 3 years ago, but she was married before. I'm her son from her first marriage. The room spun. Sarah had a son? For 3 years, she'd never said a word. How old are you? I managed. 25. I live in Seattle, work in tech. He hesitated. Mom told me you were difficult, that you had problems, that I was better off without you, but I hired an investigator. Nothing she said was true. I had to find you myself. I gripped the phone so hard my hand hurt. Sarah hadn't only taken Michael. She had stolen a grandson I never knew existed. Where are you now? I flew in yesterday. I was planning to confront Mom and Michael, but I wanted to meet you first. An hour later, I stood by my apartment window, watching a car pull in. A tall man stepped out, bouquet of flowers in hand. Even from a distance, I saw it. Michael's eyes staring back at me from another face. I opened the door, my heart in my throat. Hi, Grandma, he said softly. Tears burst before I could stop them. Oh, honey, come here. He wrapped me in a hug, solid and real. For a moment, the years of loneliness cracked open and warmth rushed in. Inside, he glanced around my small living room. The thrift store recliner, the tiny tree, the photos of Michael on every shelf. His gaze softened, sad but not pitying. Tell me about yourself, I said quickly, desperate to fill the silence. Do you work? Are you married? Do you have a dog? David laughed, but there was no joy in it. That's exactly what a grandmother should ask. Mom always said you wouldn't care. I do care. I want to know everything. So he told me. A job in software security, a condo in Seattle, a girlfriend named Emma, a dog named Murphy, a life I should have been part of, stolen from me by Sarah's lies. I could have helped, he said, voice bitter. All these years, I thought my grandmother was unstable, that you didn't want me. Meanwhile, Mom was taking my money. $50,000 I thought was helping family. Vacations, expenses, she said. None of it ever reached you. I stared at him, stunned. You sent her money? For years. And now I realize she used me, just like she used Michael. And while she was spending, you were here, alone, scraping by. Shame burned my cheeks. I get by. That's not enough. His jaw set. You're my grandmother. You should be secure, not living in a one-bedroom apartment worrying about bills. I couldn't find words. For decades, I had been the one sacrificing, providing, standing tall. To have someone want to take care of me, it felt like weakness and relief colliding. David reached for my hand. We're going to their house today. I need to see them see us together. I need them to know their lies didn't work. I looked at him. My grandson, the young man I'd been denied for 25 years, who now stood ready to fight for me in a way my own son never had. Yes, I whispered. I'll go with you. But as we walked toward the door, my chest tightened. Memories of the porch slammed back. The cold air, Sarah's sneer, Michael's laughter. And as we drove toward Michael's house, snow sliding past the windows, I feared I'd be hurt all over again. The drive to Michael's house felt both endless and far too short. My hands twisted in my lap, while David gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. Snow slushed under the tires as we turned onto the familiar street. Are you sure about this? I whispered. Yes, he said without hesitation. They need to see us. No more hiding, no more lies. My stomach churned. The last time I'd stood at that door, I'd been left in the cold, a guest unwelcome at her own son's home. Michael's BMW gleamed in the driveway. Sarah's white Mercedes parked beside it. Their perfect life, polished and warm, waited inside. My chest ached as we climbed the same walkway I'd trudged days earlier, gifts slipping from my hands. David rang the bell. My breath fogged in the icy air. Footsteps. The door opened. Michael stood there, casual sweater, relaxed expression, until his eyes found me. His face tightened, guarded. "Mom," he said carefully, "what are you doing here?" His gaze flicked to David, confused. "And who is this?" Before I could answer, Sarah appeared. The moment she saw David, the color drained from her face. Her manicured nails dug into Michael's sleeve. "David," she breathed, panic sharpening her tone. "What are you doing here?" David's voice was cold, steady. "Hello, Mom. I thought it was time I met my step-grandmother. You know, the one you told me was dead." Michael's brow furrowed. "Sarah, I don't understand. Who is this?" "My son," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Michael jerked back. "Your son? You told me you didn't have any children." "I told you it was complicated," Sarah said quickly. "He was better off with his father's family." "My father's been dead for 13 years, David snapped. "There was never a father's family. It's only ever been you and me, until you decided I didn't fit into your perfect new life." Silence stretched, broken only by Sarah's sharp breaths. Michael stared at her, stunned. "You lied to me for 3 years?" She swallowed hard, eyes darting. "I was protecting us, protecting what we had." "From your own son?" Michael's voice cracked. David stepped forward, eyes locked on hers. "Protecting your lifestyle, you mean? I've been sending you money, $50,000 over 3 years, thinking it was for family, for expenses. But it never reached her." He gestured toward me. Michael blinked. "50,000? What money? Sarah, what is he talking about?" Sarah's cheeks flamed. "David's exaggerating." David pulled out his phone, scrolling fast. "December, 5,000 for Christmas expenses. October, 3,000 for home repairs. August, 4,000 for medical bills. Do you want me to keep going?" Michael snapped his head toward her. "Medical bills? We have insurance. What repairs? We haven't needed any repairs." Sarah's voice faltered. I can explain." David laughed, but it was bitter, sharp. "You can explain how you bled me dry while living in luxury with Michael? Vacations, clothes, wine? While Grandma sat alone in her apartment with nothing but memories." I swallowed hard, stepping forward. "And while you spent his money, Sarah, you left me outside on Christmas Eve, in the cold. I heard you call me a pain. I heard you laugh, Michael. With her." Michael's face twisted. "What? That's not true." "It is," I whispered. "I stood on that porch, 35 degrees, no blanket, no coat thick enough. You never came to the door. You laughed while I froze. I raised you alone, and that's what I got." His lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, shame flickered in his eyes. Sarah folded her arms, desperate. "She's twisting things. She showed up uninvited. You said yourself, Michael, she can be a problem. You didn't want her ruining the evening." His shoulders slumped, the truth of his own weakness heavy on him. "Maybe I said things, but not like that. Not to leave her outside." The room felt like it was shrinking, each breath harder than the last. I looked at him, my son, and felt a hollow ache. "You did leave me. Whether you said the words or not, you let it happen." Michael's hands shook, rubbing over his face. I didn't know it was like this." My heart twisted. He looked broken, but so did I. Maybe some bridges couldn't be rebuilt. The silence pulsed with everything unsaid. Years of sacrifice, years of neglect. I had imagined this confrontation for so long, that maybe, if he knew the truth, he'd turn back to me. But watching him now, his eyes darting between me and Sarah, I realized he was still caught, still trapped in the world she had built. Maybe I'd lost him forever. The thought sliced through me, deeper than Sarah's cruelty, deeper than cold air and closed doors. Losing him once on Christmas Eve was unbearable. Losing him forever? It might kill me. I felt myself sway, grief pressing down. My voice cracked. I don't know if you'll ever see me again, Michael. Not really see me. Maybe you can't. Maybe you don't want to. His eyes filled with tears. He opened his mouth, but nothing came. And for a moment, I believed that was the end, that Sarah had won, that all my years of fighting, all the sacrifices, had ended in this, a mother erased. Then David moved. He stood, fury burning in his eyes, his jaw locked tight. He crossed the room in 3 strides. The air shifted, tense, electric. And then, with one sudden motion, he turned, lifted his foot, and kicked the front door wide open. The wood slammed against the wall with a crack that echoed through the house like a gunshot. My heart stopped. Then David's voice, steady and filled with a power that silenced us all. Enough. Then David stood, fury in his eyes, and kicked the door wide open. The door still quivered from the slam when David turned back to face us. His chest rose and fell, his eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen before. I'm done with this, he said, his voice low but carrying through the house. He looked at Sarah, steady, unflinching. I'm done with the lies, done with the manipulation, done with watching you hurt people I care about. The silence that followed pressed on my skin. Even the crackle from the fireplace seemed to die down. David stepped closer to his mother, his voice dropping to a whisper sharp enough to cut. You're finished, Mom. 3 words, but they landed like a hammer. Sarah's face drained of color, her lips parted soundlessly. For the first time, she looked afraid. Michael's head jerked back and forth between them. What are you talking about? David straightened, eyes still locked on Sarah. Do you want to tell him, Mom? Or should I? She shook her head quickly. He's trying to turn you against me, Michael. That's what he's doing. But David didn't flinch. He pulled out his phone, scrolling. Let's start with the marriages. Not 1, not 2, 4. He held the screen up. Marriage certificates, divorce records. Husband number 1 at 19. Husband number 2 lasted 2 years, ended with an emptied bank account. My father was number 3, then Robert Chen. Michael's face paled. What? Sarah, tell me this isn't true. It's not, she stammered. He's lying. He's exaggerating. But David's voice cut through her protests. Robert Chen, 60 years old, widower, dead of a heart attack 6 months after adding you to his life insurance policy. You think no one noticed? The investigator I hired did. Michael staggered back as if struck. Jesus Christ! His hand gripped the back of a chair like he needed it to stay standing. Sarah lunged forward, her voice rising into hysteria. It wasn't like that. I loved you more than anyone else. I wasn't going to hurt you, Michael. David laughed, cruel and humorless. You don't love anyone but yourself. You saw him as another opportunity, just like the others. Michael's face crumpled. Is that what I was to you? A mark? Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for him. No, baby, no, you can't believe this. He stepped back like her touch burned. Don't call me that, don't. The air thickened with grief and rage. I could hardly breathe. My son, finally seeing what I had known all along, but too late. David pressed on, relentless. And while you were bleeding him dry, while you were siphoning my money into private accounts, you were leaving Grandma outside in the cold on Christmas Eve, laughing, mocking her. That's who you are. Michael turned toward me, his face twisted in shame. Mom, is it true? Did that really happen? The words caught in my throat, but I forced them out. I knocked. Sarah told me I wasn't welcome. She said to leave the gifts. She called me a pain. And you... My voice faltered. You laughed. Michael's eyes brimmed with tears. He swore softly, the word foreign on his lips. Oh my God. Oh my God. Sarah snapped her head toward him, desperate. She's manipulating you. She's always needy, always twisting things. No! He roared. His fist hit the mantel, the sound making me jump. You don't get to talk about her like that. The house, pristine and perfect, felt like it was collapsing under the weight of truth. Sarah's composure unraveled. Her hair slipped from its perfect style, her face blotched with streaks of tears and makeup. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. I was trying to make this marriage work, to blend our lives, to protect us." David's voice cut through, merciless. "Protect us? You robbed me of 25 years with my grandmother. You robbed her of me. You robbed Michael of the mother who loved him. That's not protection. That's destruction." Her sobs filled the room, high-pitched, hollow. And then 3 sharp knocks rattled the door. Michael froze. I looked at David, his mouth curved into something cold. "They should be here any minute," he said calmly. Before Sarah could move, the door opened again. 2 figures stepped inside. Dark suits, stern faces, badges lifted. "Sarah Henderson?" one said, his tone clipped, professional. "We're with the FBI. You're under arrest for fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft." The room erupted. Sarah screamed, thrashing as the agents gripped her arms. "No! This is a mistake! He's lying! They're all lying!" The agents read her rights over her shrieks, their voices steady. Michael stood rooted, his face a mask of horror. "Michael!" she wailed as the cuffs clicked shut. Tell them I'm innocent, please!" But Michael couldn't speak. His jaw trembled, his eyes wide. The agents moved her toward the door. She twisted, her eyes locking on me, burning with venom. "This isn't over, you miserable old—" One of the agents cut her off. "Ma'am, I advise you to stop talking. Threatening a witness is a federal crime." They dragged her outside, her screams fading into the winter air. Silence dropped in her wake, heavy and final. The front door still gaped open. Cold air poured in, the fire crackling weakly as if even it had lost its warmth. Michael turned to me, his face streaked with tears. His knees buckled, and before I could stop him, he knelt in front of me. "Mom," he whispered, "I don't deserve to ask this, but can you ever forgive me? For laughing, for choosing her, for leaving you out there?" I stared at him. This man who was once my little boy, the boy I'd promised to protect, the boy I'd raised alone, the one who had broken me more deeply than anyone else. "I don't know," I said honestly, my voice trembling. "I want to, but I don't know if I can trust you not to do it again." He sobbed then, shoulders shaking. "I was blind. I let her poison me against you. I hate myself for it." I touched his cheek gently. "You wanted the perfect life. You thought it meant erasing me. But blood doesn't erase that easily." David placed a hand on Michael's shoulder, firm. "She's not gone. You still have a chance, but you have to earn it." Michael nodded through tears. "I will. I swear I will." The fire crackled again, the sound of something breaking and maybe, just maybe, beginning to heal. But David's face hardened once more. He pulled out his phone, scrolling. "There's more," he said flatly. Michael looked up, startled. "More?" David's eyes burned. "Oh yes, Mom's lies run deeper than you think, and the evidence, well, let's just say..." He slipped the phone back into his pocket, his voice calm, steady. "They should be here any minute. They should be here any minute." Top of form. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my new apartment, stirring gravy on the stove while the smell of roast filled the air. The place was bigger than the one I'd lived in for years. 2 bedrooms, a proper dining room, and sunlight that poured through the windows in the morning. David had insisted on covering the rent, and for once in my life, I let someone else take care of me. The walls were no longer bare. Photos hung everywhere. Michael as a boy in his Little League uniform, David grinning with his dog, the 3 of us together at the park. That night, Michael walked in carrying a bottle of wine. He looked lighter somehow, the strain that had lived in his face for years replaced with something softer. "Where's David?" I asked. "On the phone with Emma," he said, setting the bottle down, "trying to convince her to move here from Seattle." I smiled. I liked Emma. She was kind in a way that felt genuine, and I hoped she would say yes. Michael hovered by the stove for a moment, then cleared his throat. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy? Really happy?" not just saying it to make me feel better. I paused, spoon still in hand. Happiness had felt foreign for so long. But I looked around, at the cozy apartment, the photos, the sound of David's laughter drifting down the hall. And I realized the answer was yes. I am, I said softly. I really am. Michael's eyes glistened. He sat down at the kitchen table, fidgeting with the cork of the wine bottle. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said months ago. My heart clenched. After everything, I wasn't sure I could bear another secret. What is it? He rubbed his hands over his face, the same nervous habit he'd had since childhood. After Sarah was arrested, I went through her things. I found a box hidden in the closet. It was full of letters. Letters from you. I froze. Letters? He nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, notes you wrote when you were sick asking me to call. Even a letter after Dad died, telling me how proud he would have been of me. I never saw any of them. She intercepted everything. Tears blurred my vision. All those years, I thought you didn't care. That you ignored me. I thought you'd stopped writing, he whispered. She told me you were moving on, that you thought I was better off without you. Mom, I didn't know. I reached across the table, taking his hand. You didn't want to know, I said gently, but now you do, and we can't let her lies define us anymore. At that moment, David walked in, slipping his phone into his pocket. Emma's moving here, he announced with a grin. Then his smile faded when he saw our faces. What's wrong? Michael wiped his eyes. Letters. She kept them from me. David's jaw tightened, but I shook my head. Don't let her poison this moment. She's taken enough. We can't let her steal our peace now. Michael squeezed my hand. You're right. She doesn't get that power anymore. Weeks later, the three of us sat around my small dining table after Sunday dinner. The conversation shifted toward the future. Mom, Michael said carefully, David and I have been talking. We want to buy a house. Together. For all of us. I blinked. All of us? David leaned forward, his eyes warm. A real family home. Big enough for everyone. You'd never have to worry about rent or bills again. We'd be together. Tears welled up instantly. I can't let you do that. You both have your own lives. I'm 70 years old. You don't need to take care of me. Grandma, David said softly. You've been strong for so long, you've forgotten it's okay to let other people be strong for you. We don't want to take care of you. We want to live with you, as family. Michael's voice broke. Let us do this. Let us make up for the years we lost. I looked at them, my son, my grandson, and felt the weight of decades of loneliness begin to lift. Slowly, I nodded. Okay, let's be a real family. 3 months later, I stood on the porch of a big Victorian house with peeling paint and a wide yard. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. The garden stretched out back where Michael and David knelt in the dirt, arguing playfully about whether to plant tomatoes or peppers. Their laughter carried through the summer air, filling the emptiness that had once lived in me. Inside, Emma helped me in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and chatting about her new job at the hospital. The walls of the house were already filling with photos, old and new, blended together, proof that love could survive even years of separation. That evening, as dinner simmered on the stove, I caught a glimpse of myself in the kitchen window. My shoulders straighter, my smile easier, my eyes brighter than they'd been in decades. For the first time since Jim's death, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Later, after the dishes were cleared and the house settled into quiet, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. Stars blinked overhead, and the air smelled of fresh soil and cut grass. I thought of Sarah, locked away, probably convincing herself she was still the victim, but she no longer mattered. The best revenge wasn't anger, it was peace. I had my son back. I had my grandson. I had a home filled with laughter instead of silence. And at 70 years old, I was finally living, not just surviving. Now, I want to ask you, listening to my story, have you ever been betrayed by family? Have you found a way back to love after the hurt? Share it in the comments. I'd love to know how far stories like mine travel and how many hearts they touch. It had taken 70 years, but I was finally home. It had taken 70 years, but I was finally home. And now, I'd love to hear from you. If you've ever faced betrayal in your own family or found your way back to love after hurt, share your story below. I'll be reading every word. Or, if it feels easier, just comment the city or town where you're watching from, so I can see how far this story has reached. Your voice matters, and it may give someone else the courage to keep going.